according to surgeons who later sewed him back together at the San Francisco General Hospital. Guerra had the poor judgment that day to piss off the wrong MS-13 crew, who in turn apparently had the lack of awareness to realize the city had recently installed video cameras on that stretch of road in the Mission. The entire attack was recorded, blow by gruesome blow. With their nearly deadly attempt at enforcing 20th Street's territorial integrity captured by security cameras, Droopy, Joker, and Goofy were now facing serious legal problems. All three were arrested by the GTF and locked up. Gibson was the lead of the investigation. In addition to attempted murder, Joker was charged with child endangerment since he abandoned his 5-year-old daughter on Mission Street to engage in the attack on Guerra. Surveillance camera video showed Joker's daughter sitting on a bench alone and crying, while her half-paralyzed father tended to gang business down the block. Joker, Droopy, and Goofy would remain in jail until Santini's investigation was complete and they were charged with federal racketeering crimes. "The block is hot," Sparky told Diego over the phone. "One has just fallen. I have just killed one, right now, homie." He sounded winded, like he was running. Diego immediately conveyed the news to Santini about Sparky's assassination of a norteño moments earlier in broad daylight at Mission and 20th Streets. As soon as he hung up, Santini received another call, this time from Gibson, who confirmed a brutal murder had just occurred at the busy intersection. Wearing a blue bandana over his face, Sparky hopped out of a white van and walked up behind one of Pata's minions, a Meseros gang member named Armando Estrada, who was standing in broad daylight at the busy street corner, pedestrians walking to and from. Sparky pulled out a shotgun from underneath his sweatshirt, placed it at the back of Estrada's head, and pulled the trigger, nearly decapitating him. Estrada's hideously torn and bloody body lay lifeless on the sidewalk, with a group of passerby gathering around the carnage in a confused daze. Sparky hastily sped away in the van and was already on the Bay Bridge heading to Oakland by the time paramedics arrived to clean up Estrada's corpse. Soldado gazed at Sparky in the rearview mirror and couldn't help but feel proud of the rookie gang member who had just earned his stripes. "You are a true soldier now, homie," he said. Sparky was still in shock and began to hyperventilate when he noticed his sweatshirt was covered in blood. "Hey, bicho," he gasped. "I've got that fool's cerebro all over me." He pulled clumps of flesh from his hair and from the still hot shotgun at his side. The crew dumped the van a few blocks from Indio's home in Oakland and ran to their house, making the call to inform Diego about the successful hit along the way. Upon arriving at Indio's house, Sparky threw his clothes in a plastic garbage bag while Indio called Slowpain. Slowpain in turn contacted Dreamer and asked him to pick up the trio in Oakland and drive them back to Daly City for an after-action meeting and celebration. Santini told Diego to meet him at his office immediately to make a series of phone calls. The recorded conversations between Diego and 20th Street members provided evidence the clique was mandating a stay-away order on the street in the wake of the Estrada killing. On the phone, the gang members were unanimously giddy that they had just caused such a stir in the neighborhood. During one call, Momia told Diego, "Piñata has been busted wide open. Hopefully the fuckers will pay the rent now." Sending a strong message to the rival gang was 20th Street's intent. The clique would maintain control over the neighborhood by any means necessary and be paid with both respect and tax money by all rivals in their Mission territory. Despite deadly threats from 20th Street against him if he didn't pay the tax they demanded, Patas refused to be intimidated. He believed he and his fellow Meseros had as much right to earn money from the streets of the barrio as MS-13 did. He believed he and his fellow Meseros had as much right to earn money from the streets of the barrio as MS-13 did, and he wasn't going to be bullied into compliance. It was a brave stance, maybe, but it was also a very dangerous one. Patas pulled his white 1993 Cutlass Sierra to the curb in front of a driveway at Huron and Laura Streets so he could have a quick toke. He pulled out a king-size pre-rolled paper from the glove compartment and began to stuff it with hydroponic bud he had just purchased legally from a medical marijuana dispensary on Mission Street called the Green Cross. When he was younger, Rolling a good joint took practice. It was all about prepping the weed and the spin technique, the roll of the fingers. These days, anyone could fill a pre-rolled one. You just bought the weed. It was almost 5 p.m. when Patas finished his joint and prepared to take a ride to 5th and Market to pick up his girlfriend who was getting off work at the Bebe clothing store. He cracked open the window to vent the smoke and extinguish the roach in the ashtray. Patas heard the screech of brakes and the car door slam, saw a shadowy figure approach, and heard a voice whisper, "¿Qué onda, bicho?" The hooded figure unloaded 7 rounds into Patas, shooting him in the neck and back, killing him with a bullet to the head. The assassin then ran back to a silver Honda and slid back into the rear seat. The car sped southbound on Huron and Alamany Boulevard and out of sight. When police arrived, they found Patas slumped over to his right, suspended in the seat by the safety belt. Streams of blood and bits of tissue from his head, neck, and back covered the car's interior. Medics attempted to revive Patas on the way to San Francisco General Hospital, but he was pronounced DOA at the emergency room entrance. I blasted that buster right in the face, Soldado Tocoyote, over the phone laughing. The stolen silver Honda Civic carrying Soldado was already across the Bay Bridge and entering Oakland on the way to another 20th Street member's home, where Soldado dumped his bloody gray hoodie onto the washing machine's hot cycle with extra detergent. Soldado was certain that such a high-profile hit would solidify his place as a shot caller in the gang. Even better, if the local homies received the go-ahead from the big homies down south to start a new clique in Oakland, Soldado thought he might even be designated La Palabra, the word, for the new clique. He might even have been on his way to becoming a big homie. That evening, when Gibson called Santini to notify him that Juan Rodriguez, aka Patas, was murdered, they agreed that it must have been a hit by 20th Street. Patas was an old-school Mexican cholo who didn't have many enemies in the neighborhood, other than the emergent regime of 20th Street's new booties. Santini knew from his informants that the MS-13 gangsters likely had Patas in their crosshairs for months. The old dogs of 20th Street who were friends with Patas, such as Tigre and Comillo, were alarmed by the killing. As far as they were concerned, the hit on Patas had not been sanctioned by the gang's leadership and would surely send shockwaves through the streets. A few days after the murder, when Slow Pain learned that Payaso, Zapato, and Tigre attended Patas' funeral, he was furious at them for representing the clique there. It only added fuel to the fire for his plan to kill them all. At Santini's direction, Diego began to dig for information about the Patas murder, and he soon started returning info about the hit. Diego reported that Soldado had been bragging about it, and that the entire clique of new booties knew who did the killing. He also said Soldado used an old gun for the murder, a pistol in such bad condition it had to be taped together to function. Following the Patas murder, prosecutors Gwynn and Wong were alarmed and convinced that rampaging violence by the insurgent new booties of 20th Street needed to be stymied right away, somehow. Gwynn and Santini met with Cabrera and Gibson and determined enough evidence existed to meet a threshold of probable cause to obtain a search warrant on Soldado's residence. At the same time, they needed to make certain to keep information obtained from Diego under seal until the big takedown of the gang. If a defense attorney managed to get hold of the information, the gang would have confirmation there was a rat among them. Santini had an idea. Maybe they could get a warrant to search Soldado for illegal immigration documents since he was in possession of a counterfeit green card the last time he was arrested by SFPD. The attorneys decided this was the best course of action to protect their informants. Santini and a team of GTF officers and HSI agents hit Soldado's house at 949 Connecticut Street in the early evening, just hours after obtaining a federal search warrant. The apartment was in one of the roughest housing projects in San Francisco, an area known as Potrero Terrace or the Annex. It was a hotbed for gang violence and a home to a variety of Black, Latino, and Samoan gangs. Even the GTF cops were wary about policing the neighborhood. It was so dangerous. They served a warrant on an empty house. No one was home. When they did the knock notice, Legally, the occupants didn't need to be present for the execution of the warrant, so one of the larger GTF cops sprung open the door with a battering ram. The team quickly cleared the rooms and began their search. The apartment was filthy. There was half-eaten food strewn about the kitchen, and cockroaches dripped from the cabinets as the cops conducted their search. Santini and an HSI partner entered Soldado's bedroom, decorated with the typical gang paraphernalia, including a collection of blue ball caps, jerseys, and belts, as well as gang photos and tribute memorabilia from Maya's recent funeral. Santini's partner opened the closet door, and perched on the shelf in plain view sat a silver handgun. As planned, the team locked down the apartment and contacted the U.S. Attorney's Office to request an additional warrant to include firearms. The warrant was granted in just 2 hours, and agents seized the weapon, a Russian-made Markov 9x18mm handgun. In addition to the firearm, the team seized several counterfeit identification documents. It was ironic in that Soldado likely purchased the counterfeit IDs from Bata's operation, only to later murder his own supplier. Shortly after the search, Soldado was charged with murder and held in jail. One more 20th Street killer out of commission as the operation continued driving toward broader RICO indictments.